Flavia, welcome to Women Finding Clarity.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so happy that you're here. For anyone who doesn't know, you and I met at the Pioneer Valley Conference for Women, and you were a panelist. And as I was sitting in the audience for your panel, I jotted myself a note that, invite her to the podcast, exclamation point. I just loved your story. I loved your energy. And yeah, so welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. That was such a great conference. They did a wonderful job with that. And the other panelists that I was on a panel with were great. So it was just an overall wonderful experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I have to say that my conference is the South Shore Conference for Women, but this year I went to Pioneer Valley and I also went to North Shore just to get a different flavor of it all and, meet new people. And it's amazing how every conference is different.
That's what makes it fun, though. I like the fact with the She's Local organization that you're seeing the different parts of the state and highlighting professionals in that. And it makes it fun. And Massachusetts is so small where we're fortunate enough to be able to hop around like that.
Absolutely. And I feel like when you think about Massachusetts, you're always looking in Boston, but
Yeah.
there are so many, for as small as our state is, it's a big state. And there are so many other opportunities besides just in Boston.
Yeah, there is a world outside of the 495 Beltway and 95 Beltway and all that. This land called Western Massachusetts does exist.
I'm sorry, but when I think of Western Mass, all I think is, oh, so cold.
It does get cold. It does get really cold. You know, it's from you Bostonians, we're practically in Ohio over here.
That's right. That's right. That's honestly, that's how it feels to me. It's so funny.
Oh,
Well, as we're starting our conversation, I know that you are with the FR Investment Group. And really, before we get into that, I would love to know what life lessons, what's your PhD in life that really brought you to this place where you are today?
ooh, that's a loaded one. So it was funny. I never thought I'd be doing this. For context, I was horrendous at math as a kid growing up. It wasn't my thing. I tried to skip out of every math class I could. I loved history and English. You know, that was my forte. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be a lawyer. That's what I'm going to do. So going through, my high school years and all that, I geared up for that, got to college, started on a pre-law track and realized very quickly that it wasn't particularly my calling. It was a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a little different. And I really wanted to help people. So I was kind of dabbling around, sat with my academic advisor at BU, and he said, you know what, I really think you should look at, maybe a business minor. I said, oh, that's really a great idea. A little diversity, blend things in, not too much math, so I think I can survive that and go from there. So as I started taking the courses, I'm like, wow, I really like this. This is really great. So my parents, having owned their practice for many years, never thought I'd work for them in my life, were like, oh, this is fantastic. So they gave me an internship over the summer. I worked with them and slowly started to find my way and realized, as I took courses, that I really enjoyed the wealth management, financial advisory, financial planning side because I get to help people on a day-to-day basis. We're going through different transitions. I have clients getting married, learning how to mingle their finances, having kids, trying to plan for that part of their lives. And then the other side of the spectrum, I have clients who are leaving this world and, they want to make sure that they can sleep at night knowing that their wills are in place and that somebody's going to make sure that when they're no longer here, their family's going to be okay. So that's kind of how I slowly trickled into this. It was very much so by happenstance, even though my parents did this forever and it wasn't surprising to most, but it was a real shock to me.
It's so interesting. When we're growing up, we're like, oh, I don't want to be my parents. I don't want to turn into my parents. And then one day, just in what feels like out of the blue, you turn around or you look in the mirror and you're like, oh my God, I'm my mother. Right. And then
Yeah.
you're okay with it because you're like, wow, I really, there's this thing that I loved and I see that in myself now. And the beauty of that is I can look at my kids and say, oh, wow, you get that from my mom, or you get that from papa or nana, and that's really cool. It's not just about our genetics and how we look, but it's our personalities and it's the things that we're drawn to.
That's exactly it. I mean, as I said, it was funny. If you asked me as a teenager, oh, did you want to be like your mom? I'd say, oh, heck no. And now
Right.
it's like, that's the world's greatest compliment to me.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, the thing that I pulled out of everything that you just talked about is this desire to help people.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, first of all, have you always been a helper? Like, were you a helper as a kid? Is that in your personality? And or is there anything that happened that you knew, like, I'm in it to help people? This is what I want to do.
Well, I think it's one of those things where when I was going through, my college courses and all that, there's, your Wall Street institutional side of finance with that side. And then there's this other side of finance, that personal side. And what I realized was, myself included in this, finance is not really something you talk about at the dinner table. Your parents don't really sit there and say, oh, let's talk about budgeting or let's talk about this, that, or the other thing. And it puts folks at a bit of a disadvantage. I mean, I was lucky my parents are in the field, so there was common dinner table talk because they'd talk about different cases ongoing and all that. But as I started to see that, I said, wow, we really need to change this a little bit because this is great knowledge to pass down to your kids, your grandkids, and not everything should be as taboo as it is. You don't have to go into great depth and detail on, your inner workings of your budget, but just to talk a little bit about that, or even credit card debt and taking out loans and what that side of everything looks like, and just having those guidelines, it really helps you longer term.
Yeah. It's true, isn't it? And I feel like through the generations, we're becoming more and more transparent and we're becoming more and more able to have these conversations. But
Yep.
it's been such a gradual transition into actually having these clear, insightful conversations around money.
And it's so true. It's so, so true. It's getting better as it goes. And folks, my generation, we're talking a lot more about it than, my parents and especially their parents. Their parents, you don't talk about that at all. And then,
No.
I've had cases where something happens and I have a client come in and say, hey, I don't know where any of this is or what any of this is. And it's a whole thing where you don't realize there's that little piece of it where eventually you're not going to be here and somebody needs to know where things are to help you out and move things along.
Yeah. Wow. So, say I'm a new client and I walk through the door and I have no idea what I'm talking about. I have $5,000 and I say, I just came into $5,000. I want to invest it. How do we even begin?
Well, the hardest part, believe it or not, is to pick up the phone and set an appointment. Every practice is very different. And, I know wealth management, asset management's the big, finance term of what we do. I try to keep it simple. I'm a financial advisor. That's what I do. I give financial advice. So a lot of firms work differently. Some have minimums, some don't. We're a no minimum firm here. I'm very proud to say that because at the end of the day, the most important part is having that relationship with your clients to be able to have tough conversations and the not so tough conversations. Because anytime you're dealing with money, it's emotion. So we both need to be able to create a plan that we're both comfortable with and move forward in that. So once you pick up the phone, make the appointment, interview the advisor, ask the hard questions. What are your fees? What is your investment style like? When I'm working with you, when I pick up the phone, am I calling you directly? Am I calling a licensed assistant? Am I calling an administrator? How many meetings a year are we going to have? Am I going to see you once a year? Am I going to see you more than that? If an emergency happens, how do I get a hold of you? Is it email only? Is it, you have a work phone and then a personal phone? How does that all look? And then from there, it's terrible, but you'll know in your gut whether it's a good fit or not. It's that funny thing. It's that gut feel where you're like, you know what, I can trust this person. That's the most important part of all of this is the trust.
Yes. Our money is so emotional. And so trust is the biggest part of that in that relationship, isn't it?
It is.
Because people, I would imagine, are walking in with so much fear and so much, in protective mode of their money. And yeah, that trust, that's the biggest part.
It is. And, when somebody comes in and they're showing, hey, here's my retirement, here's my bank savings. This isn't money that, it just showed up one day. It was hard earned or it was inherited and it has ties to it. So understanding that part's really important in what we do because sometimes you're sitting there with a client and you're like, well, they seem really upset about something or all that. And usually most of the time it's, my parent's sick and I came into this money and now I want to do something with it to honor their memory or, my kids are taking that money and I don't want them to, use it to buy a brand new Corvette or something. I want them to use it for education. That money was from their grandparents. So there's always some sort of tie into it, which I find really interesting because it's part of their story. And in order for me to do what I do well, I kind of have to know their backdrop and their story of what's important to them and their values.
And I have to say that that's one of the things that drew me to you is that you do feel like every person has their own story to tell. And based on that story is how you move forward with each person. And I think that individualized care, that individualized focus on each person's story, and everything isn't just cookie cutter, really was such a draw for me when I heard you speak.
And that's the most important part to me because when you're looking at somebody's picture, there it really isn't a cookie cutter approach to it. It's, what do you want things to look like? It's your life. You're in the driver's seat. I'm just sitting here with a road map and we can pick the highway or the scenic route or anything along those lines. But when you're customizing a portfolio and looking at somebody's needs and where they want to go, it really works out a lot better for the client and they feel a lot more comfortable. It's not, well, this has worked for a majority of people, it should work for you. Well, there are other things in that. It's like an onion. You got to peel it back slowly but surely, and you'll find the right solution to that. And that's something that we do here. That another thing I'm very proud of. It's that whole customized, individualistic approach. And I don't know, I enjoy it. It makes my job a lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. All the relationships that you're building, all the lives that you're changing. And for me, that's the beauty of it is to shine my light and help someone see more clearly on their own path. And it sounds like you do exactly the same thing in your own way.
And that's exactly it. That's what we do. It's, most of the time I tease my clients because they never call me to ask about the weather or how my golf game went this weekend. It's usually some sort of, a problem or challenge or hurdle, and they're trying to figure out the best way to go through it. And, I can provide the tools, but the best part is they're going to pick what's best for them, and then we're going to keep moving from there. And that's really the fun part of the clarity. It's, oh, I didn't think of that, or oh, I didn't realize I had, this amount of money set aside and I don't have to worry. That's my favorite phone call of the day.
Absolutely. I bet that it is. Ooh, I'd like to suddenly realize, oh, I didn't have all that. I didn't realize I had this money set aside. That's like the magic, huh?
A little bit, a little bit. And that's part of the layers of the plan and all that of, hey, how are we going to build this? How do we want this to look? Oh, you need more liquidity because you might have this happen. Okay, that sounds great. We're going to gear it up for that. And then if you need it, it's there. And it's not like pulling teeth to maneuver and do this and that. It's a couple clicks of a button and we're good to go.
That's beautiful. I love that so much. I am listening to you speak, and I feel like as you're talking about each part of your business and different things that come up, you should be changing your hats. You've got your financial advisor hat and your therapist hat and your best friend hat and your problem solver hat. Yeah. How do you do it? How do you manage all the pieces?
Some days I do it better than others, I'll tell you that much. But, you know, it's funny. As you get through the career and you develop, you learn that the most important part is to be human first. And I think that's something in finance that's very easy to get lost through the cracks, especially when you're looking at rate of return. And I tell my clients when I sit down with them, there's really three main components of what, I do. It's the people part. That's the number one for me always. It's sitting down with you, giving you the attention, getting to know you. There's the portfolio part, that's the investments and all that, but it's one third of what I do. And then there's the paperwork, and that's the whole back scenes of everything. So when I'm balancing it, it's all in how you move those, people, portfolio, paperwork, and juggle that around. But being people forward first is the most important because the markets are the markets. You're going to have good years, you're going to have bad years, it's going to ebb, it's going to flow, people's risk tolerances are going to change. And of course, the best investment advice is the stuff I wish I knew, tomorrow, but I don't
Right.
know that. So it's sitting there and really understanding that no matter what, it's people first.
And that I would imagine is really where the trust comes back full circle that if the market isn't great, it's as a client trusting that
Yeah.
you've got my back and that you know what I want and so knowing that I can call and you've got my back.
And that's exactly it. Despite everything, I think part of the people part that's interesting, it's just knowing that my personal phone is my work phone. You can call me at any time. I've gotten calls at 6 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the evening, holidays. I'm going to pick up my phone. If it's a yes or no question and I can give you peace of mind to sleep at night, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like you don't hear that very much in the world anymore. So that in itself is such a huge bonus to working with you. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm plugging you, and I mean, I am because I was just very drawn to you energetically when I heard you speak. But it's true that that's just not something you get anymore, that people are just available.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important part to what I do. You guys, my clients work very hard for their money. And they're trusting me to make decisions for them to invest that money appropriately and allocate it a certain way. And the least thing I can do is pick up the phone because at the end of the day, it's your money. Good, bad, and different. It's not mine. I'm just sitting here, helping you out. But if you have a question, fire away. I'm happy to answer it. I actually like hearing from my clients. It's the best kind of relationship. If you're comfortable enough to call me on 4th of July, I've done something right.
Oh, I love that. I love that. If you're comfortable enough to call me on 4th of July, I've done something right.
Yep.
That's beautiful. It just hits me in all the feels, right? And so that is what makes me feel wrapped up from from a business owner, from, anyone that I'm working with, that you want someone to feel that comfortable. That's fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's important to me. If
Yeah.
it's, a different story, there are tons of advisors in the world that might be a better fit for somebody else. I mean, some people like that more corporate, I'm going to call the secretary, she's going to book the appointment, and this is how it's going to go. I'm too casual for that. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of how it goes. It's, my clients like, oh, this is my wealth manager. I'm like, nope, I just do your finances. I don't need a title. I don't need anything too flashy. Please don't ever call me the vice president of my company. I just do my job.
That's amazing. I feel like you should live here on Cape Cod because, it sounds like you're on Cape time and everything just happens when it happens. And that's kind of how we live here on the Cape.
Nothing wrong with that.
Ah, so, I work a lot with women entrepreneurs, and historically, not to, be sexist, but historically, women don't like to look at their money. There's a fear around it. We haven't been educated, like you started talking about earlier around it. What advice would you give to women entrepreneurs who are like, I can't even think about investing. I'm just focused on making money.
You know what? That's when you really want to find a financial advisor. It's not just about the investing, it's about the planning behind it. It's, can we get a plan together to build out the business? What does it look like? What are, our balance sheets and income statements, and how can we get from point A to point B? And there is a little bit of a component in there too, where as an entrepreneur, saving for retirement's not done through a corporate retirement account with, a match or something along those lines. So you still need to protect yourself on that aspect of things. And not only that, it does help you a little bit on the tax side of things too. So it's assembling that team of people that's going to help you get to where you need to go. And I always tell my female clients, never be embarrassed, never be afraid to ask for help or seek professional advice. I love working with my entrepreneur clients. They make me really think and have to dig my heels in and say, okay, what are we going to do? Those are the clients that I'm up at, 2 in the morning after a meeting going, okay, this is the problem. What's the solution? And kind of sit there and go down the rabbit hole of research, as I call it. But set yourself up early with that. You're going to thank yourself later because it's just that extra sounding board of knowledge for you to have. And especially if you have a good accountant and a good finance person and they're working together with you, you're going to be in really good shape.
Mm. And that feels good to me as an entrepreneur, right? So many of us are alone. We're solopreneurs and we're sitting behind a screen and we spend our day alone. But the idea of having a team,
Yeah.
that just feels better. It feels expansive. It feels like possibility.
Exactly. And most of the time as a solopreneur, it doesn't make sense for you to have, a CFO or anything like that in your company. It's just, have those folks there for when you need them and know that no matter what, you can rely on them.
Yeah. Oh, it made me take a breath
You
because it's
should.
yeah. And, just like I said, for you, like you wear all the hats. And as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, we don't have a choice. We have to wear all the hats. And so to have a team member that we can call and say, okay, this is your hat. I'm not wearing this one. It literally just makes me feel like I can exhale.
Absolutely. And it's what I tell my business owners all the time. You focus on what you do best and let me focus on what I do best. We're going to connect. We'll have our meetings. We'll get the plan of instruction and we'll move forward. But if that's one thing we can take off your plate so you can focus on doing what you do and growing your business and marketing your business well and creating new ideas, that's a win.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. How long have you been in this industry?
So I started off working with my parents filing papers when I was in high school, thinking that that would be, just a summer job and all that. So I started with them back in 2015. Then once I graduated college in 2020, I started the whole train of getting all my licenses and all that. So that was a fun encounter. Finished getting them in 2021. So it took me about a year to get all the stuff together. So I'm going on my third year as a full-time financial advisor. And I just passed my principal's license. So that's really exciting. So moving forward and all that on that front too.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I used to work for as an admin for a financial planner, and I'm telling you, watching the
Oh,
other people go through this process of passing these tests and getting these licensures and all, it's overwhelming. So, I mean, bowing down to you for having done it and you're still continuing and you're still finding the success. It's amazing.
thank you. I did have some choice words for it when I was going through it, but I'm so grateful for the amount of knowledge that those exams give you and prep you for. Because once you get into the client world, it's really hands-on. There's no kind of training period. It's not, here's, a fake client. It's, no, this is a real client and this is real life. And that's when it really hits you and you go, oh, wow,
Yeah.
this is happening.
No training wheels here.
You got it.
Yeah. What I love about you and everything we've talked about is, again, energetically, money is masculine. And the way that we've historically dealt with money has been in a very masculine way. Go, push, do, work through it, persevere, win. And you've taken a very masculine business, a very masculine topic, and you have brought in the more feminine energy around it, which is allowing, nurturing, support, right? And you've built the relationship not because it's go fight win, but because it's let me help you, let me guide you, let me nurture you so you can be successful. And as an energy worker, like I'm covered in chills because that's where we're headed in the world, which I love to see as we're moving into more of a feminine model of business. And it sounds to me like you're doing it so beautifully.
You, I appreciate that. And it's true. I mean, I have a lot of male counterparts and I work with them, and our views are a touch different on certain things, but it goes back to my original comment, different advisors for different folks. And, my market is a little bit more on the women's side, or younger couples or couples in general. And it's what this world is starting to see a really big shift in. There's a big transfer of money right now, and a majority of that money is actually going to women. It's not going to men for the first time ever. There's a lot of studies on that, which I find very exciting. And it's a really great opportunity for us women to make an impact and really shift the way things are looked at, because perspective is really important. And you can always look at the glass as half full, half empty, or not full enough. Who knows? Pour more water in it, I guess. But when we're doing things in the business world, you need a little bit of those soft skills, especially now and seeing it all shift over. And that's going to be, the recipe for success in business. It's that education part, that teaching, that, guidance. I think that's the more important part. And that's what
Yeah.
differentiates you from AI. AI can't sit there and hold your hand and walk you through things.
That's right. And we're all so like, oh, DIY, I've got AI, that's all I need. And that's not true. Sure, it can, write a plan for you, or it can, but maybe that plan is on point and maybe it's not, first of all. Second of all, you're not calling AI in the middle of the night because, or let's say in the 6 o'clock in the evening or on 4th of July to because you're emotional and you've had this thing happen and you need someone to talk you through it. Like
Yeah.
the relationship piece, it's building the relationship that is going to determine whether you're successful or not moving forward with the rise of AI. Your relationship is going to be everything.
It is. Even now it is. I mean, it's what you said. AI might get it right, it might get it wrong, it might take certain variables in, it might not. But, it's, oh my goodness, my, mother's in hospice, things aren't looking good. I need money transferred. Oh my goodness, it's this time, but, POAs expire, once somebody passes, they don't go past that. So you got to get the phone in and get the order in and this and that and make sure everything's all set and sound. But you know, once banks are closed, can AI, sit there and still push buttons, make phone calls, say, hey, okay, we got to get this order in and do this, or, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. And it's back to that human connection too. Sure, computers are amazing for what they're amazing for, but we are spiritual beings in a physical world. And it's that human connection. It's the face to face. The computer's great because it allows you and I to be face to face right now. It
Yeah,
allows anyone who's watching to be face to face with us, anyone who's listening to hear us. And the computer is just the vehicle. It's not the soulfulness of it. It's this soulful connection that really humanizes the entire experience.
absolutely. And I think when you look at the world, pre-COVID, the COVID years, and now getting into that post-COVID, people are craving that human interaction more and more, whether it even be a Zoom call or an in-person meeting. I don't do a lot of phone calls. My clients want that. Let's just, even if it's a 15 minutes, let's hop on a Zoom call. And it's a great tool to be able to do it. But I think COVID really spun that out where, being in isolation for so long and only being able to see, certain people or this or that, the other thing, it really changed the outlook in the post-COVID world where we crave that because once you're isolated, you don't realize how lonely the world can be sometimes. And there's nothing better than somebody telling you, hey, everything's going to be okay. You have nothing to worry about. Focus on what you need to focus on. I got your back.
Yeah, that's perfect. I feel like you just totally wrapped it up. I've got your back.
Yeah.
So, as we are wrapping up, Flavia, how can people get in touch with you?
So you can go to my website, frinvestmentgroup.com, and all my information's there, my bio and all that. You can give me a call. My cell phone is 774-230-2039, or you can shoot me an email at flavia.mccaughy@frinvestmentgroup.com.
Perfect. And I'm assuming that from your website, they can call or email you from there as well.
You got it.
That's perfect because your website is in show notes. So it'll just be a click of a link. And is there anything that you can offer listeners?
Absolutely. So here at FR Investment Group, we do a free consultation. So you come on in, bring your paperwork, we look it over, talk about your goals, objectives, what you're trying to accomplish. And then from there, we figure out if we can create a plan and move forward. And then if not, that's okay. All's good.
Beautiful. Not everyone does that anymore, a free consultation. So I feel like that really is a gift.
Oh, thank you.
Flavia, it was so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for being willing to come on and talk about what you do and the beautiful way that you do it. And again, your link is in show notes. And I do hope that people get in contact with you and just really empower themselves just a little more.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful. And I look forward to hopefully getting together soon.
Absolutely.